Achte deutsche Rohstoffnacht, meine Damen und Herren. Leider Gottes natürlich auch virtuell im Rahmen der virtuellen Invest. Und wir wären gerne mit Ihnen natürlich auf der Bühne in Stuttgart. Aber nichtsdestotrotz, wir haben hier ein tolles Unternehmen für Sie heute mit dabei. Skeena Resources und Kelly Earl, die Vice Präsidentin Communications, wird uns das Unternehmen vorstellen. Und ich werde mich jetzt auf Englisch weiter unterhalten. Kelly, hi, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Jochen. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here on the 8th German Resource Night. As I just said, unfortunately virtual, but hopefully next year we can do it in person. That would be great, because normally we would have 400 people in front of us, and that would be fantastic. Yeah, Skeena Resources, you just published 5.3 million ounce resource, which is, yeah, outstanding. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I would suggest that I turn up the presentation, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Jochen. Yes, we're very excited that resource update just came out, and it exceeded our expectations, and I'll get into it here in a second. So I'll be focusing on our Eskay Creek project, and we're calling it a revitalization because it's a past producing mine that we're putting back into production. So some forward-looking statements. And I'll just quickly cover where we are. We're in the Golden Triangle of Northwest British Columbia in Canada. This is an area that's very well geologically endowed. It's had a lot of interest lately from mid-tiers and majors. Newcrest just came into the area, Newmont, Yamana, Barrick is a large shareholder of ours. So it's an area that's really starting to gain some interest, and it's because geologically it's spectacular. It has strong First Nation support. The government is very supportive of mining projects, so it's really an excellent place to work. So we do have two projects in the Golden Triangle. They're both past producing mines that we acquired from Barrick. One is called Snip and the other is called Eskay Creek, and we are located in Tahltan-Territorium in the Golden Triangle. And our focus of this presentation will really be the Eskay Creek project. So I wanted to touch a bit on the infrastructure. I've discussed this before, but it's just so important to our project. We have 3 hydroelectric facilities that have been built in the last decade between our Snip and Eskay Creek project. And this was built at a cost of about $2 billion. And this is a game changer for these projects. So when Snip and Eskay were in production, they were fly in, fly out, they were remote, they were diesel powered. 50% of the operating expenses at Eskay Creek as a mine were for fuel. And now that we have really cheap hydroelectric power, probably between 4 and 6 cents per kilowatt hour US, it dramatically drops the costs. And the overall cost will probably be about 5% of OpEx now because of that inexpensive hydropower. So a really big game changer for us in terms of opening up the area and access to infrastructure. So a little history on Eskay Creek. It's a world famous mine. It was formerly the highest grade gold producer in the world, produced from 94 to 2008, produced 3.3 million ounces of gold, 160 million ounces of silver, and it produced at a staggering 2.5 ounces per ton. So again, highest grade gold mine in the world when it was in production. Because it was so remote and infrastructure was lacking and the price of gold was so much lower when it was in production, it meant the cutoff grades were very high. They range from 15 to 30 grams per ton. So for the first 3 years of mine life, while they were waiting to build a mill, the cutoff grade was 30 grams per ton. So we had a very simple thesis, what materials left behind that was not economic when the mine was in production that would be economic now. And the other twist is this was an underground mine historically, and we've now re-envisioned it from an open pit perspective. So this is the exciting new resource that Jochen mentioned that we just put out. The global resource is 5.6 million ounces. In the measured and indicated category, we have 5.27, so 5.3 million ounces, and it's grading 4.3 grams per ton gold equivalent. In the open pit category, there's 5.1 million ounces. It's still very high grade at that 4.2. And it's this 5.1 million ounces at 4.2 grams per ton gold equivalent that we will be pushing into our pre-feasibility study. And I'll touch on a timeline in a second here. So it's a very large resource. It's very high grade. Most importantly, I think that it's worth pointing out that there's only 298,000 ounces in the inferred category. So in this image here, everything in gold is measured and indicated, and it's just the little blue pockets that are inferred. So we've got a little bit more of infill drilling to do later this year, but really not very much. And the drilling we do later will be focused on exploration. So I wanted to touch on our current economic numbers. These are from our 2019 PEA study. I would mention that this was based on a fraction of the ounces that we now have. So 5.1 million ounces of measured and indicated in the pit is what we now have, and we'll be pushing forward with the mine plan for the PFS. These PEA numbers were based on 2.7 million ounces, so much smaller. So I suspect all these numbers that you see here will go up. So currently it's a 9-year mine life producing 306,000 gold equivalent ounces per year. We're expecting both the mine life to increase and also the number of ounces we produce a year to increase. So we'd really like to get the number closer to 350 to 400,000 of ounces of gold produced per year. With that, of course, the CapEx is going to increase. So we're at 233 million US right now, and we suspect it'll come in closer to somewhere around 300 million. You can see the numbers here. I've highlighted the higher case. We'll probably be doing the PFS at $1,500 gold, $20 silver. You can see the economics here for the smaller resource. We suspect that the after-tax NPV at a 5% discount will go well north of $1 billion now, and we're hopeful that the IRR will increase a bit too. So you'll have to stay tuned to see the new economic numbers that'll come out with the new PFS. Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch a little bit on the existing infrastructure. So it's one of the wonderful things about Eskay is this is a brownfield site. It's a past producer. We have road access. There's most importantly, a permitted tailings storage facility. So the TSF is what we call a dead lake or a non-fish bearing lake. It's a natural containment site. It has all the tailings from the old workings when the mine was in operation. And this is where we envision putting all the tailings for the new mine. And it has ample capacity. And most importantly, it's a permitted discharge point under the Mines Act in British Columbia. So that's normally what takes the longest part of the permitting process is the TSF, and we already have one. I've also pointed out the former waste dump here. It's Albino Lake. It is also a natural containment site. And this is where all the waste rock from the old mine was stored. And I mentioned that in the first 3 years, the cutoff grade was 30 grams per ton. So that meant anything below that was put into this lake. So we have drilled this off. We actually had a drill on top of the ice this past February and March. Put about 10 drill holes into it to try and get an idea of what's left behind. And we hope to have those results out shortly. But we do estimate that there's a few 100,000 ounces sitting in this lake. So that's hopefully how we can add to the mine life in the future. Next, I'll touch on some exploration upside because there's a substantial amount left at Eskay Creek. We drilled 83,000 meters last year, but 90% of that was infill drilling. The resource that we put out in 2019 was half in the inferred category. So we had a lot of infill drilling to do, and we've had much success. As I mentioned, we've got 5.3 million ounces now in the measured and indicated category and only 298,000 in the inferred. So it was very successful. But it means with all the infill drilling we did last year that we didn't do much exploration drilling. And we see a ton of exploration upside here. Shallow ounces were cheap ounces historically. The deepest drill holes that they drilled were only about 250 meters from underground workings. So there's a huge amount of potential. And I've circled here the new northern pit expansion, so that we've extended the pit from the original resource, and that's one of the reasons why we've got so many more ounces in the open pit M&I category now. And right below where you see the northern pit expansion, there's an area called the contact mudstone. It's a horizon that's in purple there. And this is the ultra high grade horizon that carried the 2.5 ounce per ton material historically. And the nature of this deposit, it's called a VMS deposit, and I won't get too much into the geology, but it just means that it represents the seafloor. So this mudstone horizon represents the seafloor, and the seafloor can change over time. So we're looking for lower mudstone horizons that occurred earlier in geologic time, and we've already had some success. I mentioned we didn't do much exploration last year, but we did put about a half a dozen drill holes deeper, and I've highlighted a spectacular hit that we had there. 314 grams over 2.21 meters, and that's in a brand new lower mudstone unit. So exactly the kind of unit that we're looking for, and this is going to be one of the key areas that we follow up on for exploration drilling later this year. So we have wrapped up a 5,000 meter exploration program in Q1 of this year. We are waiting on those results. Those are the red circles that you see on this slide. We focused on near mine exploration targets to begin with, because it's always better to focus on areas close to the pit where you could perhaps quickly add some ounces before you start doing some more wildcat deep drilling. So We suspect results, so well, I know results are starting to trickle in. I should have a press release out with those results out sometime within the next month. And then once those results come out, we'll prioritize all of our targets and we'll put a release out to say where we'll be focusing the approximately 25 to 35,000 meters of drilling later on this summer. I would like to highlight for your viewers just what a spectacular asset Eskay Creek is. So at the top chart, it shows top Canadian open pit producers by how many ounces they produce a year. So you can see Eskay Creek with the 2019 resource is sitting here in 5th place with 306,000 ounces that would be produced per year. We are very confident with the new resource that we've brought it up, to 5.1 million ounces, that we're going to be getting more ounces produced per year. Our goal is to hit closer to 400,000. So by the time the full feasibility study is out, and I'll have a timeline up here in a second. So that would make Eskay Creek, one of the top producing mines on ounces per year in Canada, which is very exciting for us. And there's so much exploration potential at Eskay Creek that we see a clear pathway to adding more ounces. So we are very hopeful that we'll be able to push this project north of 6 million ounces with some more exploration drilling this year. And as Jochen has highlighted, is the grade. Grade is king. And Eskay Creek is a spectacular high-grade deposit. So you can see the average pit around the world, average grade for an open pit is 1.5 grams. And Eskay is sitting all the way up at 4.3 grams per ton gold equivalent. So it will be one of the highest grade open pit mines in the world when we get it back into production. Here's the timeline that I mentioned. We just put our resource update out and we're about to launch into a minimum of 25,000 meters of exploration and a little bit of infill drilling that we have left to do. And then that'll lead into the pre-feasibility study. So that'll be out at some point later this summer. We were hopeful it would be out end of June, but our VP Exploration surprised the engineering team and came up with a million more ounces than we were expecting in the measured and indicated category. So the engineers have had to try and rejig the mine plan a little bit. So I think the PFS is more likely to come out in July or August, but it's a good problem to have when you found another million ounces than you were expecting. And then the exploration results will continue through the year, and that'll all lead into the full feasibility study, which should be out in Q1 of next year. And then, of course, with the feasibility study, we'll have the reserves, the full reserves. We don't yet know the conversion rate from M&I to reserves, but we're hopeful we'll hit at least 3.5 to 4 million ounces. And then off the back of that, we will start project financing, and we hope to have construction start in probably Q2 of next year. And on the construction front, I would mention that because this is a brownfield site and we do have existing permits, we've actually already started some of the construction. So we now have room for 200 people at camp, permanent sites. We were able to refurbish some of the old buildings that Barrick had on the site. So we've got permanent camp now for 200 people, and this will be our construction camp. And this is what will be used when we kick off the project construction next year. And our current timeline is to be in production in the middle of 2024. I would say that's our base case, and we're going to try to do better and see if we can get that into 2023. Our VP of Sustainability, Justin Himmelwright, is working hard with our First Nations partners, the Tahltan right now, and also the BC government to work on what we're calling a permitting charter. And this would lay out a time frame that all groups would agree to. So the government of British Columbia, Skeena, and our Tahltan First Nations partners, we would all sit down, look at the timeline, and then we would all drive towards production at that date. So we're very excited about that. It should be a big de-risking step on the permitting front, and we hope to be able to make that document public in May. I'm going to quickly touch on our other project, which is Snip. It's about 50 kilometers away from Eskay Creek. It has a small resource currently that we put out last year, 646,000 ounces, but it's quite high grade at 13.5 grams per ton gold. This is a wonderful little deposit. It's very high grade. We are hopeful that perhaps in the future we'll be able to make this a satellite deposit to Eskay Creek. Hochschild Mining, which is a Peruvian underground mining company, does have an option to acquire 60% interest in this project, and that option expires in October. We are not sure yet if they will exercise their option. To do so, they'd have to spend 2.5 times what we've spent on the ground. So we're a bit agnostic. Either Hochschild becomes the operator and we're pushed forward on the project, or they drop the option, at which point we'd look for it to become a satellite deposit to Eskay Creek, because there are some beautiful high-grade ounces there, and it is only 50 kilometers away, and we could truck the ore to the mill over at Eskay. So we don't get any value for this project yet, but we hope to have some unlocked by October of this year. Quickly, I'll touch on our First Nation relationship. I already mentioned the Tahltan. There are partners in this project. I'm excited to announce that they just made an equity investment into the company. So they put $5 million into the project, and they're now shareholders in Skeena. It's the first time they've done this. We're very excited about this. I also mentioned to Jochen that we also announced the creation of a nature conservancy in partnership with Tahltan. So Skeena had a small project called Spectrum that's beside the sacred Mount Eskay. It's a sacred mountain to the Tahltan where they've been mining obsidian for thousands of years. And they had mentioned to us their desire to turn this into part of the park. So we worked in collaboration with Tahltan, the provincial government, and 2 environmental groups, and we created the Mount Eskay Nature Conservancy. So that was pretty exciting for us as a company to be able to be involved with that. And it's also another stepping stone in our great relationship with our Tahltan partners. Last slides are our capital structure, 222 million shares outstanding. Our market cap is up to 816 million Canadian. We've had a very successful year share price wise, but I would argue we've got a long way to go. And I think you'll start to see some re-ratings once the full resource is incorporated into the PFS and we hit some of those permitting timelines that I was talking about. So it should be another exciting year for Skeena. And that's everything from me.
Fantastic. Wow, that was really fast. Thank you very much, Kelly. Of course, I need to ask one question at least here. First of all, great presentation, and I think you guys have done an extraordinary job here. And I was smiling when I saw the 52-week low and high, because it was 92 cents. I bought at $1.01, so I'm
there
happy.
You go.
I trusted you guys. But really, the thing is, what is cash in the bank, and is it enough to say first of all to fulfill your work programs, but also to bring you to the project financing stage? Sure.
So we've got about 35 million Canadian right now. We did a flow through financing recently, and we also got that 5 million from the Tahltan. Our budget for this year is probably 55 to 60 million, and that would take us all the way through to the full feasibility study. So we will have to do a raise at some point later in the year. The other thing that I would mention is that as part of this permitting charter that we're working on with the Tahltan and the government is we're looking to see if we can bring some of the CapEx forward and start some of the build this summer. So on areas that are already permitted, for example, improvements to roads, the tailing storage facility, there's a bit of work that needs to be done there. So this is something we're looking at as well. So I say the current budget is say 55 to 60, but if we get approval, we would like to bring some of the CapEx forward. So there might be, say, another 30 million that we could do this year, which will expedite the timeline so we can hit those targets and maybe see if we can get into production in 2023. So don't have an exact answer for you yet. It should become more clear once we have some more information on the permitting timeline.
Super. Would it be then only hard dollars, or could you use for that also some flow-through money, because this is like a special tax thing in Canada? I mean, with your share price today, like $3.50, $3.60, it's 10 million shares. This is not a big dilution for sure, and it's I call it a positive dilution.
So the flow-through money will be used on the exploration drilling that I announced. So we want to do 25 to 35,000 meters of exploration drilling. Unfortunately, flow-through doesn't work for mine builds. It's meant to be exploration. It's to, expand and open up northern areas and bring jobs. So it won't work for the mine build, but we do have a lot of exploration drilling yet to do, and that's what we'll be using the flow-through dollars on.
Super. Perfect. Hey, then good luck, I would say, and I look forward to the latest and upcoming developments, I would call it, as the drills are still turning, and I'm pretty sure you keep on going with great results. I have a very good feeling on that.
I would agree with you. Thanks, Jochen.
Super. Thank you very much, Kelly, for a great presentation for the 8th German Resource Night. Ja, meine Damen und Herren, Kelly Earl, Vice President Communication von Skeena Resources. Sie haben es gehört, die Firma hat sich nicht nur sensationell sensationell entwickelt. Wie gesagt, ich bin selber bei $1,01 eingestiegen. Jetzt sind wir bei $3,60 und ich fühle mich immer noch sauwohl dabei. 5,3 Millionen Unzen Gold, das ist ein echtes Brett für eine Ressource. Das ist toll. Und sie haben immer noch 35 Millionen Cash in der Kasse. Klar, die müssen noch mal was aufnehmen, um wirklich in die Projektfinanzierungsphase eintreten zu können. Aber auf der anderen Seite hat man schon einen Haufen Genehmigungen. Man ist deutlich weiter als so manch anderes Explorationsunternehmen, was dann diesen Entwicklungsweg beschreitet. Und von der Perspektive her denke ich, ist Skeena fantastisch aufgestellt und hat trotz allem noch deutlich weiteres Potenzial nach oben. Wir geben der Aktie locker ein Kursziel von $5 bis $6 für die nächsten 18 Monate, kann aber auch mehr werden, da auch die Goldpreise unseres Erachtens nach steigen werden. Schauen Sie sich die Aktie an. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen. 8. Deutsche Rohstoffnacht virtuell und weiter geht's bei uns.